Alright, guys, welcome back to the Traditionalist channel. This is going to be lecture number 13 Civil Society, Constant, Hegel, and Tocqueville. Lecture number 13. Two Frenchmen and one German, both charting the long term political impact of the revolution, made major contributions to political theory by examining the idea of freedom. Benjamin Constant was the first to distinguish ancient and modern concepts of liberty. Hence, civic republicanism and liberalism, arguing that the former is inapplicable to modern society. Hegel, who both admired and feared the revolution, attempted to locate the individual in communitarian networks of order. Liberty is liberty. In a similar vein, fellow Frenchman Alex de Tocqueville called attention to non-state voluntary association in his analysis of the conflict of equality and liberty in America. Blueprints for a Free Society. One more aspect of the French Revolution's legacy became clear to early 19th century political thinkers. There are competing blueprints for a free and equal political society, the two most prominent of which are liberal republican and civic republican. After 1800, the term liberal was used to mean a radical form of republicanism that maximized individual private liberty and minimized the power and purview of government. This version was directly connected to capitalism and non-interference in private property and the markets. Civic Republican is the name given to the tradition formerly just called Republican. Minimally, it held that freedom means freedom to participate in politics or self-rule. Essentially, the modern liberal republicanism evolved out of the modern reprise of ancient civic republicanism. Ownership of property became the substitute for material honor. Subsequent civic republicans tended to drop any reference to their martial heritage, but they still emphasized public spiritedness and political action over the freedom of the left to be left alone to pursue private profits or liberalism. Ancient versus modern liberty. The French political thinker Benjamin Constant was the first to argue explicitly that the liberty of the ancient republic is not the same as the liberty of the modern republics. Modern liberty, Constant says, is the right to express one's opinions, choose professions, dispose of property, associate with others, and practice religion, plus the right to exercise some influence on government officials, all subject only to law rather than those in power, and its sovereign or political active. It is sovereign or politically active only in appearance. Asian liberty is, by contrast, the direct collective exercise of sovereignty. It was compatible with complete absence of freedom of opinion, religion, and personal behavior, the complete subjection of the individual to authority of the community. Asian liberty was fit for small slave-holding republics that were martial, requiring constant participation in politics and substantive virtues on the part of the citizens. Modern liberty is characteristic of large commercial Pacific states where commerce replaces war. Where all citizens work, there are no slaves, and none or few have leisure, meaning equality rather than aristocracy. According to Constant, we can no longer enjoy the liberty of the ancients. In fact, modern mass commercial society makes ancient republicanism dangerous. It was this concept of liberty that was applied, he believed, in the terror. What Constant called modern liberty, the 20th century political philosopher Isaiah Berlin called negative, meaning freedom from something. Liberty as the absence of obstacles. Constant ancient liberty, Berlin called positive freedom, that is, freedom to. The two liberties. Here we have liberal republican, civic republican. Modern private liberty, it was what Constant proposed, which then Berlin called a form of negative freedom or freedom from, which is liberalism. I am free from persecution, while civic republicanism, and defined by Constant as ancient political liberty, and defined by Berlin as a positive freedom or freedom to. Freedom to do whatever I want, freedom to have a gun, Second Amendment, which is called republicanism. Something which essentially means self-determination or the ability of the self to determine its own course of life. Negative liberty fuels liberalism, and both require a world in which we deny the unity of good. There is not one all-encompassing good. There are many competing goods. That's why we need a pluralistic society, not a community devoted to one God. Democracy is linked to positive liberty, which means linked to civic republicanism or the ancient notion of liberty. Hegel's metaphysics. George Wilhelm Friedrich Hegel aimed to construct a metaphysics in which freedom was fundamental but encompassed in reason. He produced a system of the whole in the grand style of all reality, which for him is historical and evolutionary. All reality is God, the absolute pure spirit. But God is evolving, and human beings who embody that spirit must go through historical stages. In order to reach the right perspective for understanding the whole, Hegel believed that the stages of full development had been reached. Hegel's Phenomenology of Mind, 1807, is supposed to trace the logically inevitable forms of spirit or mentally available to human beings. He tracks the most limited perspective the human mind can take. Then it follows its dialectical conflicts until it reaches the most comprehensive perspective, the perspective of concrete, ethical reasons and freedom. This movement of spirit continues from our objective consciousness of things to human self-consciousness. Hegel makes the important claim that human self-conscience can be achieved only in relation to another self-conscience, in being acknowledged by another. Throughout most of human history, this achievement has been prevented from reaching its proper point because of rigid inequality. For example, in the ancient world, the relationship between aristocratic lord and slave or serf prevented this mutual recognition. The slave sees himself as an unfree object, and the master sees himself as the free but only abstractly, unable to work on or transform nature, a purely negative freedom. History is, in part, the story of the slave coming to recognize his free will by braving death, and the Lord coming to recognize that he is not a mere omnipotent negative power, but must deal with the slave, hence work, one on equal footing with another independent self. They come to realize their combined freedom in independence and turn in their mutual unhappy consciousness to worship the external cross as the unification they lack. Thus those the ancient world become Christian, in which life is recognized in service, work, and obedience. It would take another 1,000 years until the French Revolution, where equality was proclaimed and the aristocracy abolished, to bring the completion, the unification, and mutual respect of lord and slave. But later, in the same book, in the section called Absolute Freedom and Terror, Hegel argues that the concept of freedom utilized in the revolution was partial and incomplete. Its concept of the individual was an uncomprehended, particularly an abstraction that regards the world as nothing but its own will. And this is a general will. The enlightened self-thinking of itself as a pure individual regards all society and nature as nothing but a limit on its freedom and tries to destroy it. The French-English advanced notion of enlightenment, freedom, and is faulty. It leads to a self without limits that seeks to destroy the other. Moralität and a couple of German words. It is in Hegel's Germanic correction of the abstractness of the revolution that the complete human mutual recognition is found. The political requirements for this he outlined in his Elements of the Philosophy of Right, 1821. He identifies the form of social life in which free consciousness is rightfully embedded. Hegel distinguishes Moralität, abstract duty, and Cyclic, customary morality. Moralität is abstract rules of duty that apply equally to all. Cyclic is the morality of actual persons holding offices or roles in a community. The latter is higher, more complete, and less one-sided than the former. It is, we might say, communitarian. Hegel's account of politics has an hierarchical developmental organization. In customary ethical life, there are three levels of stages of organization. First is the private sphere of the individual and the family. Second is the Bürgerliche Gesellschaft, civil society, a system of economic provision of needs and administration of justice. Third is the Rechtsstaat, or constitutional state of laws, rather than ruled by individuals. For Hegel, he states, is an ethical organism, the whole into which the truly free individual is integrated with its fellows. Hegel approved a constitutional monarchy. The legislature and the executive gave shape to the otherwise formless mass. that is a mere collection of individuals. Democracy by itself lacks form. Hegel's immediate political influence was conservative. The individual rationality and the freedom of the Enlightenment is a necessary but incomplete stage of consciousness. Completion is the inclusion of the free individual in family, in community, and under state law. The modern constitutional state is the embodiment of reason. Alexis de Tocqueville. Another distinctive contributor to civic republicanism was Alexis de Tocqueville, author of the Democracy in America, 1835 to 1840. Tocqueville believed that the French and American revolutions had shown that the equality was the theme of the emerging age, but the Americans had gone further. To understand the future, it was therefore necessary to understand America. Tocqueville found that in America, virtually all traditional European institutions of inequality were absent. Furthermore, social arrangements and culture were highly egalitarian compared to Europe. Tocqueville found this equality on the whole admirable, but he also famously wrote that it raises a danger, the tyranny of the majority. Psychologically, people in democracy value equality more than liberty. People don't want to appear to believe that they are better than others, but they can tolerate others appearing to believe they are better either. This is a normal force in promoting conformity. Aristocratic institutions defended privilege but also protected individuality. They preserved the ability to avoid the control of public opinion and the majority will. Those traditionally arrangements also connect people. The aristocratic and peasant had traditional mutual obligations. Equality and democracy put an end to all that. Democracy is the actually isolating and conformist at the same time. Democratic citizens are independent, free, and equal, but therefore alone. Such individuals are weak in the face of the overwhelming power of the majority and the state. Indeed, Tocqueville warns that democracy, however beneficial, tends to create a new despotism of a gentle paternal state and immense protective power, with fewer places to go for help. Citizens will demand that government do for them what feudal and guild institutions once did. Society will become thinner. Tradition will be eliminated and connections will be reduced, all to give freedom and equality. For Tocqueville, Americans seem to have evolved a way of mitigating this danger, the art of association. Lacking hereditary institutions, they join invent clubs, go to meetings, and politically organize. Competing structures. We now have at least 4 competing ideas and structures. First, the liberal commitment to minimal government. Second, the civic, republican, and direct democratic commitment to funding the community with political power to enhance political participation. Third, the conservative state and moral community. And fourth, the pluralistic, mostly voluntary association of civil society, which would be definite for free republican society. In the 19th century, liberalism won over civic republicanism, and in the most cases eventually over the conservative or communitarian state. This does not mean our system today is not a mix of all 4. It is. But the kind of republicanism that came to dominate in the 19th century reformed itself and faced enormous challenges in the mid-20th century and seems more or less secure in the late 20th and early 21st centuries is the liberal republicanism. So guys, really hope you like these videos and some of the dangers of democracy and how it leads to prioritizing equality over other things. Hope you like the video. Peace.